Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's getting better all the time. Mental health outreach with your host, Sister A. Legree, providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. Please log on to our website at igbatt.com or igbattmho.org. Again, providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. So this morning, I just wanted to come briefly to talk about rejection. Rejection. Rejection is one of those things that not only impacts the person that's being, it's the gift that keeps giving, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's not a gift. When a person is rejected, not only do they go around sometimes putting up walls, those walls can impact their children, their walls can impact their wives, their husbands. It impacts everything that they touch. So I want to talk about rejection. When you're living with a severe, persistent mental illness in particular, rejection is one of those things that unfortunately does come up. Okay, when you're in a situation when you're feeling rejected, okay, and a rejection can come from a lot of different things. One of the things, I'm just going to read a few things here from our booklet that we have, and then I'll just talk more about it. It says, where does a fear of rejection come from? An individual can develop a fear of rejection from a variety of sources to include a history of abandonment, abuse, peer rejection, family issues, and other negative situations. For example, some parents, for various reasons, may have a favorite child and a not so favorite child, and they make it known, and not in a joking way, but they actually make it known that I don't like this child. So of course a child goes through life feeling rejected. That's just one example. But what happens is, no matter how it comes, that fear of rejection, that rejection opens the door for a whole lot of other issues. Other issues such as it brings about guilt. It could be a poor self-image, a tendency to degrade oneself, anger, hatred, self-pity, distrust, and a lack of self-confidence are just some of the negative feelings that come from rejection. Denial, avoidance, anger, and hostility are just a few of the man-made emotional defenses that we use to control the pain of rejection. And I want to stay right here for a few minutes, but let me read this again. Where does a fear of rejection come from? A variety of places. An individual can develop a fear of rejection from a variety of sources to include a history of abandonment, abuse, peer rejection, family issues, and other negative situations. No matter where it comes from, fear of rejection or rejection can bring about guilt, a poor self-image, a tendency to degrade oneself, self-pity, distrust, or lack of self-confidence. All of these come out of that rejection. Now, and then there are other feelings that we go through life, and this is what I want to talk about. And then we have feelings like denial, avoidance, anger, and hostility. Whenever we're feeling rejected, we automatically put up a wall against that. That we put up something. I feel rejected. I have to erect something to kind of protect me, okay, from that feeling of rejection, right? So for some people, being rejected forces them to work harder, right? Being rejected forces them to, maybe do things differently, okay? Being rejected causes them to walk through life and feel like, I don't care, I don't need a person. We see this a lot, especially when a parent is not there, whether a father is not around or a mother's not around, the child kind of internally begins to believe that, I don't need a father, I don't need a mother, and they don't even realizing that they've kind of put up the wall. Now, in that moment, putting up that wall, that defense mechanism is important, because that defense mechanism is what is getting us through, is what is causing us to survive. It's a survival mode, okay? In order for me not to be hurt, my dad said he was going to come and pick me up. He never showed up. So in order to not be hurt, I'm going to walk around like I'm going to become angry. Because it's easier to show anger than it is to talk about being afraid or being fearful or being hurt by what someone did. Because when I say that I'm hurt, right, or when I say I start crying or I'm tearful, to some people that makes you feel vulnerable. And a lot of people don't want to feel vulnerable. Why? Because when I felt vulnerable in the past, people have hurt me. So I walk through life, I've just kind of come up with this shell like a turtle where I'm really hard on the outside, but on the inside, that's not the case. The problem with this is that when we talk about using anger, hostility, and those are just an example. When you see somebody that's really hostile, or you see somebody that's really angry, well, many times what it is that anger is just a shell, it's just a cover up, because they're saying, I don't want to be hurt. It's a cover up to deal with fear. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't like feeling vulnerable, so I automatically put up this shell. I automatically put up this wall. The problem with putting up the shell or the wall is that you can't get out and people can't get in. And that's the unfortunate part about it. Whenever we anticipate being rejected, we erect emotional defenses as a way to protect ourselves from the pain. That's what we do. That's kind of what I was saying. Whenever we anticipate being rejected, we erect emotional defenses as a way to protect ourselves from the pain. Whenever I feel I'm going into a situation where I think people there will reject me, or where I'm triggered in some way, I will automatically put up this defense mechanism. Whether that defense mechanism is anger, whether it's showing that I don't care, well, I don't care what they say, or if it's fear, or for example, I may say, I just don't want to go, I don't want to deal with it, or whatever it is, we automatically put up this wall. The key is that we can't go through life. We can't go through life, have a healthy life, doing that. We want to get to the point to be able to know the difference when we're putting up the wall, and then when that wall is hurting us, and when we need to do something different. Okay? So let me kind of continue to read my little thing that I have here. For example, whenever we anticipate being rejected, we erect emotional defenses as a way to protect ourselves from the pain. That's all it is. We're protecting ourselves from the pain. My dad said he was going to pick me up. He never did. So I've developed this hard shell. I don't need a father. I don't need a mother. I don't care. And we go through life not even realizing that we put up this wall that to protect ourselves from the pain. Again, in the moment that may have been useful, but some of these things, these defense mechanisms that we're using now, is no longer helpful. Unfortunately, man-made defenses, that's all it is, a man-made defense, as a way to protect ourselves, doesn't heal the problem, it just conceals it. The fact that my dad said he was coming to pick me up, and he never did, and now I walk around like I don't need a father, or I'm fine without a dad, I don't care about my mother, all that's not healthy, right? All that's doing is just covering up the issue. It's not dealing with the issue. It's not dealing with the initial issue. For you to say, I don't need anybody, doesn't make the pain go away. All you're doing is stuffed it further down into your emotions. You haven't dealt with it, okay? Man-made defenses or gimmicks give us the illusion of being free. Yeah, I don't need a father. I did really great. See, I'm doing so great without the father. I don't need a mother. Yeah, I'm 6 figures. I'm successful. I'm raising my children. I went to college. I don't need a mother. I don't need a father. Okay. Man-made defenses or gimmicks give us the illusion of being free. So we think that we are free. But the feelings we are trying to cover up always have a way of manifesting in other areas of our lives. They always have a way of manifesting in other areas of our lives. Covering up our feelings can cause us to go through life being on the defensive and fearful in our relationships with other people, for example, right? The goal is to heal that, not just to cover it up. We want to heal the pain, not to cover it up, okay? Because those man-made defenses that we've created, they not only control your present, but they also can control your future. And when we're talking about, so how does this apply to a person living with a severe or persistent mental illness? Many times when people say things, you're crazy, you're a weirdo, you're stupid, people say different things, right? And as a way to keep ourselves from being hurt, we erect these walls, right? Well, I don't care about people, or we become really angry, we become really hostile, we become really, go on the defensive all the time. We're quick. Well, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, right? Because we don't want to be hurt. The goal is not to, number one, take a look at those defenses that we've erected and to see if it's working for us. If it's working for us, if it's helpful for us, because it gets to a point where we go through life, those walls that we put up, we're carrying those walls. We are carrying those things around. And at some point, if we're lucky, those walls are going to get really heavy. And that when that happens, we're going to have to make a choice. Some of us are dealing with anxiety. Some of us are dealing with depression. Some of us are wondering, well, what did they think about me? What if I fail? We work so hard. People will say, oh, she's just such a hard worker. Yeah, she's a hard worker, but what is driving that desire for hard work? What's driving that desire is that she doesn't want to fail. Well, nobody wants to fail. What's the big deal about that? But it goes deeper. I don't want to fail because if I fail, then that means I'm a miserable person. If I fail, that means that I'm not a good person. If I fail, that means there's something wrong with me, right? So again, we have these walls that we put up, right? That we put up to protect us from being hurt. But we have to take a look at those walls. We have to take a look at those defense mechanisms and see if they're still working. Are they hurting us more than they're helping us? Some of us, we can't, it's hard to stay in relationships. Some people have been married 10, 11, 12 times. Some of us have been in jobs, 10, 11, 12 jobs. We can't get along. We've been in several churches. We've been in several organizations, right? As soon as someone, I didn't like it there because of da-da-da-da-da-da. Then you see 5 months later, I didn't like it there because da-da-da-da-da. These people, da-da-da-da-da-da. We have to take a look at that. Is it the people or is it us? But even when I say that, some people automatically get on the defensive. What do you mean you talk about is me? What do you mean it's talking about is me? Right? Because we worked so hard to put up these walls to show everyone, to show the world that is not me. See, when a person rejects you, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. When your father said he was coming to pick you up and he didn't pick you up, it had nothing to do with you. He was just I want to say a low-down individual, but that's his issue, or that's your mother's issue. That's not your issue, but we don't know that. When it happens, we automatically internalize it and think it's something wrong with me. So when I think it's something wrong with me, I automatically put up this wall to prove to myself that no, I'm the greatest. I'm a wonderful person. So sometimes we go overboard. We go to the extreme to show. We work so hard because we don't want to deal with that pain. We don't want to feel that pain. We don't want to deal with that fear of rejection. When rejection comes, it automatically triggers something. What is a trigger? And that's what we have to ask ourselves. It triggers those feelings of inadequacy. It takes me back to a point when I remember when I was being sexually assaulted and I didn't have a voice. It takes me back to that point where my mother said she was going to do this and then she didn't. It takes me back to the time when my mother said these things about me and it hurt. So again, we put up these defense mechanisms, we put up these walls to prevent ourselves from being hurt. In the moment, at that time, those walls may have been necessary. That defense mechanism may have been necessary because it had to get you through, because you had to make it through. But now that you've made it through, it's important to take a look at, number two, what are some of the problems, the challenges, the emotions that I continue to have? I'm dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, dealing with worry. Depression, anxiety, worry, fear, trust issues, right? All of those things. Then you want to take a look, okay, where are these things coming from? Okay, why do I have a problem with being vulnerable? Why am I so fearful? Why am I so anxious? Why am I so worried about everything, right? Why can't I sleep at night? Again, it's hard. It gets harder and harder over a period of time to continue to keep that wall up. It takes more energy to keep that wall up because you walk around fearful that you're going to fail. Some of us have a very strong fear of failure. Where did that fear of failure come from? Well, where did that fear come from? Right? We want to take a look at it. It's one thing to say, yes, I'm fearfully, wonderfully made. I'm not going to give into this fear. That's great. But we want to take a look at where did this fear come from? Okay? How did I come to this point in my life where I'm so fearful, where I'm worried about everything, where I'm anxious about everything? We want to take a look at that. And when we take a look at it, for many of us, it goes right back to that root of rejection. When something happened, when we were rejected and we put up this wall and we're saying that, hey, no one's going to hurt me again. No one is going to take advantage of me again. I don't care about my father. I don't care about my mother. And then we work extra hard. And we don't realize that we're working so hard, trying to be the best version of ourselves, not realizing that we still have these unresolved emotions, these unresolved things that we have to take care of. So when we talk about dealing with rejection, and when you're living with a severe, persistent mental illness or mental illness, is first of all to realize, okay, when you're feeling a certain way, when you're responding a certain way, why am I responding this way? Why do I find myself withdrawing? Why do I don't want to be? I just don't want to be around people, and that's fine. And sometimes we all need a break from people. But if you're doing that all the time, what is that about? Could it be I don't want to be around people? I don't want to be hurt? Because the thing is, in order to change that, we're going to have to put ourselves in situations where we are vulnerable. We're going to have to put ourselves in some situations where we run the risk of being hurt. Okay? So again, when we talk about rejection, living with a severe and persistent mental illness can make you feel like something is wrong with you. Okay? Can cause you to not only shy away from people in certain circumstances, but it can also keep you from embracing your future. And everyone has a future. As I said before, even if you hear voices, you find yourself often depressed or anxious or worried. Whatever your mental health symptoms are, you do have a purpose. You do have a reason for being here. But when we allow rejection to put us in a situation where we shy away from other people or we shy away from things because we are afraid of being hurt, afraid that people are going to talk about me, afraid that I'm going to be wrong, afraid that I'm going to be right. Then there are some people, believe it or not, who are afraid of being successful. They're afraid of being, they're afraid of being successful. They shy away from it, right? But rejection won't do that. We have to get to the point where we're going to say, look, I'm going to push past rejection. But I'm going to push past this. Keep this in mind as well. If we are reacting to events or situations based on our fears, we could misinterpret the situation. We can misinterpret the situation and miss out on an opportunity. That's the reason why that when situations come up and we find ourselves feeling a certain way, we want to take a look at it. Why am I feeling this certain way? It may be, yes, my feelings are valid. Your feelings are valid, but is it true? Is it accurate? Is this that situation? Okay, a person could say something to you, and they may not have said it the way you think they're saying it. All right? Or they could be. But the thing is, you need to be able to evaluate that. You have to understand that whenever you're triggered, your body may be in the now, but your mind has gone back to the past because you're triggered to something. Something has kind of got you, wired up or amped up. And you have to take a look at it and ask yourself, what is going on? Is this really what's happening now? You want to begin to ask yourself. Because here's the thing. It's not about me or about the other person. It's about you being the best version of yourself. It's about you, more importantly, it's about you becoming or fulfilling the purpose that God has for your life. And everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a reason for being here. It doesn't matter, as we've said before, your voices, your diagnosis with schizophrenia, your depression, your anxiety disorders, your past sexual abuse, your past physical abuse, or even if you were the abuser, even if you were the person who are sexually abused someone, if you were the person who was the rapist, or if you were whatever your thing is, as long as you're no longer doing that and you're repented and you're moving forward, there is a purpose for your life. Okay, there is a purpose even for you, for your life. What gets in the way is we allow things to get in the way. Our past gets in the way, not in a sense that we don't work through it. When we don't allow when we allow our negative emotions, our past feelings, our negative thoughts, our negative feelings, our thoughts that make us feel like we're no good, that we can't make it, when we allow those things to get in the way, then we're not going to be able to move forward. Those are the things that's getting in the way. It's not the sickness. It's not your illness. Yes, you may have an illness. You may have a sickness that will require you to move a little slower, right, than everyone else, but you can still move forward. So the problem is not the illness. The problem is not the sickness. The problem is our view. The problem is those things, those thoughts and feelings that we allow to get in the way. It comes to a point in our lives where we can say, that this happened, that this person did this. My father wasn't there, my mother wasn't there, and those things may be true, and we grieve those things. It's important for us to grieve those things. We don't want to just kind of skip over it because it hurt us. So if it's something that hurt us, we need to deal with it. But as we're dealing with those pains from the past, we need to continue to keep moving. Whether you're moving slowly or you're moving fast, you need to keep moving. Because today is April the 15th, 2023. There will only be one April 15, 2023. There are some people who want to hold on to their pain, their past, so tightly. Oh, you don't understand. You don't understand. You don't get me. You don't understand, what happened to me. You don't understand. You don't understand. Okay? And you want to hold on to that pain. But just kind of realize something. As someone said to me just recently, they came to the conclusion that they were just wasting their life. They were just wasting a lot of time. Because when you take a look at, how much time we spend, right, holding on to our pain, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. That's 5 years that we'll never get back. That's 5 years that we'll never be able to fully live the life that we were designed to live. So it's okay. No, it's not okay to hold on to the pain. What we want to do is acknowledge it. Okay. Number two, acknowledge the situation, acknowledge the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that came as a result of that situation. Talk about the hurt, deal with the hurt, process the hurt, right? And then continue to move forward. What we don't want to do is just stop. You don't want to just stop, and just stop, I'm not going to move forward, and then all we do is continue to process and work through and deal with the pain. See, it's a difference in recognizing that something happened, recognize the walls that we put up, and then begin to challenge ourselves. One of the things we have to do is when we think thoughts, is begin to ask ourselves, is this thought true? Where is this feeling coming from? Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors go together. Where is this feeling coming from? Where is this thought coming from? Is this a now thought, or is this coming from something that happened in the past? And if so, I have to ask myself, is this what's going on now, or is this me? Right? Is this a trigger? Why am I being triggered? Why is this person bothering me? I don't even know this lady. I don't even know this person. Why do I feel this way? Well, because she said that. But so what's the big deal about what she said? And then when you begin to analyze it, this lady reminds you of someone 25 years ago who made you feel a certain way and that you never really got over. So again, when we begin to process it, we don't want to ignore the pain. You don't want to act like it didn't happen. You don't want to replace we don't want to replace hurt with anger, right? Because see, for some reason, anger looks like a stronger emotion. Because when I'm angry or I'm aggressive, it looks like I got it together. Because I don't want to be weak. Weakness looks weak, right? So I want to do aggressive. I want to look angry. Because when I'm angry and I'm aggressive, it seems like people are listening to me. It seems like I'm getting my point across. It seems like, that rah, rah, rah. Whereas I don't want to be weak. But what we don't want to do, we don't want to just swap emotions. If you're hurt, admit that you're hurt. If you feel vulnerable, admit that you feel vulnerable. And begin to process and work through it. Why do I feel hurt? And grieve it. There are some emotions that we have to bring up to the surface. Cry, grieve over it, and then move forward, because we can't do anything necessary about it. But what we don't want to do is act like it doesn't exist. The problem is that we act like our pain doesn't exist. And it does, because what happens is what that pain does, all it does, it manifests in other areas. Okay? It manifests in other areas. I can't sleep, overeating, I'm worried, I'm anxious, right? I'm yelling at the kids, I'm kicking the dog. Or my kids are kicking me, right? Or the dog, just all type of stuff is going on. And it goes from one generation to the next. We have to begin to say, okay, yeah, this bothered me. It bothered me that my dad wasn't around. It bothered me, the things that my mother said to me. The things that my mother said to me, you wouldn't say that to a dog, okay? It bothers me, okay? And it's okay to admit that. That hurt me. Right? It bothered me that my dad wasn't around. And because my father wasn't around, I had to grow up quick. I had to, put up this wall, and I had to work hard. I had to do all this different stuff, but it still bothered me because that shouldn't happen. Parents should not be abusing their children. That is not what parents should be doing. Children shouldn't be doing it to their parents either. But that's not how it's supposed to go. So again, don't just act like your pain doesn't exist. Don't just act like, the rejection doesn't bother you, because it does bother you. It did bother you, and again, it's okay to admit that. We get free when we're able to admit what's going on. I admit that this is a challenge. I admit that I'm having problems here. I admit that I'm hurt. Right? There are some people who are, who have habits now, drug addicts or workaholics or, prostitutions or whatever, gambling, whatever marijuana, whatever you're into, as a way to deal with the pain, as a way to mask the pain. And then when you start pulling back the onion of, hey, what was the pain? So there are some people who are victim of physical abuse or sexual abuse who are drug addicts now, right? Or drug abusers, substance users, right? And then you look at this person, well, how did they get where they are? Well, when you look at their story, when you hear the story, you understand. You see a little, you get a glimpse of why the person is the way they are. Because they never had an opportunity to come to grips with the pain. All right? They never had an opportunity to come to grips with what happened to them. I was watching this particular broadcast, and there was one young lady. She talked about she was raped repeatedly. A period, she was walking down the street. She was grabbed by a couple guys. They took her 3 days, and she talked about just the number of times. One day it was 3 guys. I think the second day, I think she said it was maybe 2 or 3, and then the third day was like 6 or 7 guys. But when you look at her walking the street, using using drugs and prostituting, you would have never, you might think, well, how did she get here? That's how she got there, right? There are some things that have happened to us that we're dealing with. There are some things that have happened to us in our lives that are so painful that we will do whatever we can to mask the pain. Whether it's alcohol, whether it's drinking, whether it's work. Some people work hard, whether it's trying to be a perfectionist. I want everything right. I want everything perfect, right? Whatever it is, we'll do whatever we need to do so we won't have to deal with that pain. But I'm telling you is that pain is still there, okay? Just because you ignore it, just because you try to move past it, just because you try to mask it with working hard, being a good citizen, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever, it's still there. It's just manifesting in other areas. So what we want to begin to do, that's why some people are so uptight and so anxious. They're perfectionists. They're anal. Everything has to be perfect, right? Because they're so afraid of what would happen if it wasn't perfect. So again, I want you to take a look at, if you don't take anything from this, is number one, realize that unfortunately rejection happens. Number two, there are some situations, there are some of us that will be in situations where we may be rejected more. Whether it's because you have an illness, whether it's because you don't have a father or a mother, or whether it's a workplace situation, right? But whatever that feeling is, number three, understand that whenever we are rejected or whenever we hurt, we are going to put up erect walls. We're going to come up with defense mechanisms. Number four, we have to understand, are those defense mechanisms still helpful now? Because if those defense mechanisms are keeping us from living a full life, then it is no longer helpful. If those defense mechanisms, if we have to work too hard to keep up those defense mechanisms, if my defense mechanism is keeping me from engaging with the world fully, then that's a problem. Okay. Also, number five, I don't know what number I'm on, but number five, kind of realize that when pain happens, when you're hurt, you want to begin to deal with it. You want to begin to process it. You want to begin to grieve it, right? You want to think about what happened, so you can think about it, process it, and then put it away. When you ignore it, all it does is manifest in other areas. Why? Because you never dealt with it. Just because you say, I don't care, I didn't have to have a father, doesn't take away from the pain that's still there. It doesn't take away, well, I'm not in any pain. Yeah, you are, because I can look at your life and see how your life is going, that there's some pain there, right? And you may say, no, I'm a wonderful father, I'm a wonderful mother, I'm doing great. My kids are doing great without a father or without a mother. Are they really? Okay? How do you define great? So you define great by based on, oh, they have clothes, they have food, they're not beating their wives or whatever the case is. You define it by the outward. You define it by, they never went to jail, they went to college, or I didn't go to jail, I went to college, and you think you're okay. Are you really okay? Or do you really think you're okay? Again, I get it. I get why we do that, because again, we have to deal with that pain. We have to find a way to deal with that pain, to deal with that hurt, because if we didn't, we would not move forward. So I get it. But all I'm saying is take a look at it, because that pain is manifesting in other areas of our lives, right? And you can see it in work, you can see it in how you engage with other people, you can see it in how, whether it's a husband